Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. And my favorite part is the variety and how easy the meals are to make. How about meals like cheesy chicken, black bean enchiladas with salsa verde, maple gravy smothered pork chops with stewed collard greens and sweet potatoes, spiced cauliflower and pepper with jasmine rice and cilantro yogurt sauce. Choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or let Blue Apron's culinary team surprise you. Recipes are not repeated within the year. You're never going to get bored. You can customize your recipes each week based on your preferences. Blue Apron has several delivery options, so you choose what you need and when it fits your schedule. Each meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card and pre-portioned ingredients and can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. I've done it, and if I can do it, you can. Very easy. Blue Apron's freshness guarantee promises that every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. Check out this week's menu and get $30 off your first meal with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/Mike and Mike. You're going to love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so do not wait. That's blueapron.com/Mike and Mike. Blue Apron, it's a better way to cook.
Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
We're Mike and Mike. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guest on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, Ryan Clark, will be in here later in this hour. Our NFL insider extraordinaire, Chris Mortensen, is here right now. And again, we have a story that we are just reporting, and you're the one working on the story. That certainly, at least in its headline, is extraordinarily disturbing. I will give you the floor.
Yeah, Zach Miller, the Chicago Bears tight end, underwent urgent surgery after the Saints-Bears game last night. When you saw him dislocate his knee on that touchdown or non-touchdown catch, whatever you want to say. It was not ruled a touchdown. But he had artery damage in that left knee. It's a dislocated knee. Those are always very serious injuries. And so the vascular surgeons came in, and he was having surgery last night as the Bears were leaving town. We don't know the result of that yet. But when they do that, when you have the artery damage in that leg, the fear is that, hey, you're fighting in part to save the leg. You're going to probably graft an artery from the other leg to do this. And some of these dislocated knees, some of them, the greatest worry is the artery damage and the nerve damage. You know, we're not talking about saving a career here. We're just trying to save the guy's leg or save it so he has quality of life. Teddy Bridgewater, when he dislocated his knee, what did they do? They took him off in an ambulance off the practice field. That's how urgently they act in these matters. So we don't know the result, but it was a very, very serious injury. And as I was told, this is not about saving his career. It's about saving the leg. Does that mean literally saving the leg? There needs to be some clarification. But that's really what it was done. Urgent vascular surgery. Vascular surgeons, as you know, are and by the way, the skill of the vascular surgeons are such that this is not the only time they're going in and doing this on this player. On this player it is, but right. on just general populations.
Let me mention 2 things quickly. One is we're going to show you the play here, and I've been asked to give a disclaimer that it is certainly disturbing. It's one of those injuries, and we see them, unfortunately, in sports regularly, where your first reaction is, oh, my goodness, the human body is not meant to move that way. So we all knew he was going to be seriously hurt the moment that you see it. Now, when you see when you hear the word "save the leg," obviously no one is expecting that. We have a newswire on it now. So, and again, the sources are telling Chris Mortensen. So Mort is actually here, but let me just read it to you the way we have it. Bears tight end Zach Miller underwent emergency surgery Sunday night in New Orleans to repair a damaged artery in his injured left leg. League and team sources telling Mort the doctors are trying to save Miller's leg, not just his career. Miller dislocated his knee in the third quarter. The dislocated knee is considered, quote, more significant than a regular dislocation, which is a serious injury. Sources tell Mort that vascular surgeons were called in an effort to repair Miller's leg, which included grafting tissue from the other leg to repair the damaged artery. He was initially credited with a touchdown. The play was ultimately reversed. Bears running back Tariq Cohen said after the game, it's a tremendous loss. He always gets us fired up and knows exactly what to say. We have to find ways to keep moving forward. So, Mike, that's
horrible.
What we have.
I mean, just a horrible injury, regardless. And then you hear where it may go. And I don't know if you know this, but you're the one talking to people. Is there how soon do you know something?
We should, hopefully the team will have a statement and clarify and even tell us that, look, the surgery went as well as possible. I mean, on Teddy Bridgewater, they came out, their trainer, medical trainer came out, and Eric Sugarman, and said, look, the good news is after surgery there was no nerve damage.
Right.
Now, in that case, they didn't deal with the severe arterial damage that apparently has happened with Miller. So I think we'll get some clarification. Maybe it'll calm things down. But, listen, as I said, they weren't talking about, okay, let's get this guy so we can save his career. We got to work here and get this leg saved. Now, over the years, you have, I don't know, let me say there's been 6 to 10 dislocated knees. And the kid, Jalen Smith, the Notre Dame kid.
Right. The nerve damage.
That was the nerve damage in that case. But a lot of times, the worst one I've heard was Napoleon McCallum, Oakland Raiders. Yeah. It was a primetime game against the 49ers. They're playing in the Bay Area. And that's the first time I ever heard somebody say, hey, we're trying to save his leg. And they were fortunate that it was actually near Stanford, where all the wonderful Stanford medical facilities are. And they did manage to save his leg, but not his career.
So, but Teddy Bridgewater is back, and it appears is going to play. Jalen Smith is back and playing, so we can wish for that for Miller. And obviously, we won't speculate about any of this until we get, as Mort says, details of what the surgery was yesterday. But you might have seen a little bit of that floating around on Twitter early this morning, and so now Mort with some of the details here. And again, we'll just hope for him for the best, and we'll see what happens. Mort here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Let me get then, Mort, after that with you to trade deadline day, which is tomorrow in the NFL. And the NFL is not like baseball. We wouldn't expect Justin Verlander to go from one team to another in football and change the dynamics of the postseason. Right. But with Juju Smith-Schuster doing what he did last night and everything that's happened with Martavis Bryant over the course of the last week, and I kept seeing scrolls yesterday, teams are calling Pittsburgh like crazy.
Really?
Is there any chance?
Were teams calling Pittsburgh like crazy?
Is there any chance?
You're breaking news to me right now.
Well, I thought didn't I see that scrolled on I
know that Adam Schefter and I don't believe the teams are calling
fair enough. And I apologize. I was watching games yesterday, and I saw scrolls on the bottom saying that teams have contacted the Steelers about Martavis Bryant.
Well, Martavis Bryant has attracted a lot of attention over the last 2 or 3 weeks for obvious reasons. I want to be traded. No, I don't want to be traded. Oh, his girlfriend says he does want to be traded, wants out of there. It was inactive yesterday because of the trouble he got into with Mike Tomlin, the Steelers coach. Here's the thing. This is a guy who we know has talent. But as a guy who also, his rookie year, 2015, they didn't play in the first 6 games. They didn't even dress in the first 6 games because they didn't deem him mature enough to play. And subsequently, he has had several suspensions, including a year-long suspension he's coming off of. The next drug, whether you miss a test or you test positive, next one is indefinite suspension. So teams are not going crazy. Let's go get this guy. And his body of work is very small. He's a talented guy, and the Steelers have not given an indication they want to trade him. Now, if somebody wants to step up, which we haven't heard about, doesn't mean it isn't happening, and offer something of significance to the Steelers, would they listen? I guess they would, but their posture has been no, and I'm not sure that we've heard a lot of activity there.
Okay, I just want to clarify. I can't decide if it was on CBS or Fox or Red Zone yesterday, but that was scrolling.
I saw that scrolling. Another thing I saw scrolling
multiple teams. Like I say, Adam and I don't have the absolute lock on the market. Adam might, but even he agrees with me that we don't have this intense activity on Martavis Bryant. We'll see.
Okay, here's another thing. To Greeny's point, I saw scrolling that the Seahawks are looking for a left tackle to trade for.
This just in.
Okay. No, not looking, but looking to trade for one. We know they're looking for one. Is there...
Listen, here's where the talk, and I don't even want to call it speculation, but substance to this one, is that Dwayne Brown of the Houston Texans, as you know, he sat out the first several games with the Texans because he was not comfortable with being there. And he was scheduled to make $9 million. He gave up like almost $5 million before he reported. We know his, what the problems he has with Houston Texans owner Robert McNair. He's made that clear. They played in Seattle yesterday. That's where he wants to play. That's the word. He wants to play there. That's what our sources tell us. Seattle needs a left tackle. So can they make a deal? The old rumors used to be maybe Jimmy Graham for Dwayne Brown, but Seahawks are on the record. Whether it's Pete Carroll or John Schneider, their general manager, we're not trading Jimmy Graham, but they can still work out a deal if they want to make it happen. So there's one certainly. Now the Philadelphia Eagles, because they had the injury to Jason Peters, they are certainly talking to teams about offensive tackles. Joe Staley of the 49ers was there yesterday. He broke the orbital bone in his eye, although he is flying home, so he's going to be okay. But they really do. The 49ers, as Kyle Shanahan said, it was going to take at least a first-round pick. That's a high price, even though Joe Staley's an accomplished left tackle. And I think the Eagles have to be careful here because they're 7-1. Remember they gave up a third-round pick in Jordan Matthews for Ronald Darby?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Darby looked good for the first half that he played, but they're 7-1 basically without Ronald Darby. So did you have to give up that third-round pick? They don't have a second-round pick. They don't have a third-round pick. Yeah, they have 3 4s and a 1, so they have to be careful they don't get held up here. So are we talking about Cordy Glenn of the Bills? There's a few other tackles out there that might be available. But yeah, teams are calling, and so I can tell you this much: we'll have stuff as it goes on, but who's going to have it? It's our boy Shefty.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's our boy Shefty. Because I'm not saying I'm not plugged in, because I hear a lot of stuff, and Adam and I collaborate on enough, but I'd bet on Shefty before the Tuesday trade deadline tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern.
That's one of those days where you just have Shefty's Twitter timeline open at all times.
That's right.
And you wait and see what happens. Mike and Mike Mort in our studio now. Obviously, there's a lot of off-the-field stuff going on in the NFL. And
Is there?
Yeah. So much of the attention yesterday was on Bob McNair and how the Texans players were going to react. But you guys also had a story on the morning countdown show about Jerry Jones being at the center of a movement of a lot of owners to block the contract extension for Roger Goodell. Can you enlighten us on that, and where do we stand on that?
Well, I think that the news there, we've had the discussion about owners, including Jerry Jones, obviously, because Jerry's a big name. So whenever you hear the name of Jerry Jones, he's going to jump out there, that name. But that there was a conference call on Thursday among what we were told 17 owners. At first we were told 15, then we were corrected. No, it was 17 or 17 teams represented on a conference call in which everybody was not invited. Because I talked to 3 or 4 owners who said didn't even know about it. But in that call, the discussion was pertaining to Roger Goodell's contract talks, and beyond that, maybe it's a good thing that we don't extend him and we start looking for the next guy. That's kind of how that discussion went. Now, everybody in that call didn't agree with that concept. Some were focused on the contract. Others are just disturbed about what's been going on with the league office over the years, some of the messes there. And speaking to the McNair point, in that meeting, as Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham had reported, that what McNair said about the inmates not running the prison, which was a poor choice of words under any circumstances. And I had owners tell me, look, he was not speaking about the players. He was speaking to the league office, and Troy Vincent took appropriate objection to it. And McNair has admitted that was inappropriate even at that instance. That's what he told the players on Saturday morning, but they're not buying it. And I've also talked to somebody else who was in the meeting in which this comment was made who said, no, I think it was all-inclusive. In other words, I think
the owners need to be in control of everything, and right now everyone else is.
In other words, the reference may, whereas 3 or 4 said, no, McNair was talking about the league office. I had one say, no, I think it was all-inclusive of the league office and the players.
Right.
Yeah.
So yesterday, obviously, this has been a very sensitive topic, and it's something every week. They then went out and played, as you saw, one of the games of the year in a defeat. But going forward, I don't know. There was supposed to be a players' coalition meeting today, but that's been postponed. They want McNair. McNair didn't even go to Seattle yesterday, by the way. He was not feeling well. So he didn't even go there. So I don't even know if I answered your question.
Well, I get, to me, one of the important questions is the league, it seemed, and the players started something good from that first meeting. Now the second meeting, and maybe that's not even true, but the second meeting has been canceled already. Now it seems if there are owners that are not sure they want Goodell back, yet they're all supposed to work together with Goodell to work with these players. Where is that? It seems like everything got lost there.
It's a mess. It's going to take some strong leadership, and there have been some strong leaders. Even Malcolm Jenkins of the Philadelphia Eagles, who's having like an all-pro season on defense. There are some players who are really showing tremendous leadership.
He is Doug Baldwin, I think, from Seattle.
And there are owners who have open ears to the cause. Arthur Blank of the Atlanta Falcons, I was told in the meeting that didn't involve the players, made a very eloquent speech about just partnering up here and listening to them. But others just still want to draw the line in terms of workplace rules, which Jerry Jones has spoken on the record about. But then there's this whole concept of we're having a different mess every year. One of the owners said you can't have these many messes as a CEO of a major corporation and expect to keep your job. And that was obviously in reference to Roger Goodell. That being said, six official members of the compensation committee, and Arthur Blank is the chairman of that committee. The majority of them want to get this contract extension done. The flip side also is Roger Goodell going to get tired of all this stuff and say, forget it? I don't have the answer to that, but I've heard them openly say it.
That was the quote that I thought was most interesting that you guys had was, you don't get to have this many messes and keep your job. It does feel like the NFL has one, and they vary in significance from the extraordinarily significant to not so significant. But there's one off the field scandal that they're dealing with like after another. It's not even one a year. It feels like it's almost one a month.
It feels like one a week right now,
or one a week right now. And some of these are all sort of intertwined together. Yeah. But so where does it go? I guess is the question. Is there urgency on the part of the owners to make a decision on Goodell one way or another based upon the CBA not being up for quite some time? But there's all this stuff you're dealing with right now, and he needs a vote of confidence or something to handle it on their behalf.
It's hard to get my sense on. Get a feel for the pulse of the urgency of it. I mean, here's what we do know: we were told, and it had been reported, a contract would be in place by the start of the football season. It's one day away from November, and it's not done yet. So something is obviously we know there's an issue there. It's just a matter of whether or not the compensation committee wants to just impose its will. Because, by the way, to oust Goodell, it would take 24 votes to straight out fire him. Okay. Well, 17 participated in that phone call, is what we were told. That doesn't mean all were in favor of ousting him. All were in favor of let's get this contract where we want it to be. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and what is the urgency? And what's ironic right here is Roger Goodell is trying to be a peacemaker among the players and the owners, and the players are kind of gravitating toward him a little bit, but there was so much damage done in his relationship with the Players Association that you don't know how effective of a leader he can be at this moment. Well, that's about to unfold, I think.
Something that affects actual play on the field, and I'm sure Dallas Cowboys and their fans want to know, is Zeke Elliott going to play the rest of the year before or if he ever serves that?
Well, at 5 p.m. today in the Southern District of New York, we're going to have the hearing on the preliminary injunction at 5 p.m. I don't know that we'll have a immediate decision from the judge. But we will know if it is, he'll miss. If it is not granted, then he'll miss 6 games, or if it's whatever is lifted. Either way, we're looking at a 6-game period, and it's just as Zeke Elliott is coming off his 2 best games since he was reinstated, and the offensive line. And there's obviously Jerry certainly isn't happy about that. I will say this: Jerry has been unhappy about the salary issue for a long time.
Goodell's salary,
yeah, exactly, and other league office employees.
Yeah,
okay. But as it pertains to this, we're going to find out about Zeke this week. I don't think there's any question about it. I'd be surprised if we didn't.
Mike and Mort is here. And then there was the story, and Shefty sort of gave us a little heads up that he might be heading in this direction about teams.
Shefty did?
Shefty did.
Oh, yeah.
He gave us a little nugget.
Yeah, a little nugget.
He loves to do this stuff. Oh, yeah. He dropped Calvin Johnson on there.
That's it. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Is Calvin Johnson. So how would you assess the chances that Calvin Johnson comes back in place for something?
I'll say long shot chances because that's kind of really. To be honest with you, I'm not using Shefty as my total source here, but Adam's done the reporting on this, and there are some funny stories behind it, which I guess we may not have time to tell. But I'll say this: listen, the speculation has been the Philadelphia Eagles. But once again, they need a tackle. They're 7-1. They have only a first-round pick next year and 3 4s. They don't have a second and third-round pick. That's not good. What's it going to take to get Calvin Johnson, who, by the way, his base salary is still on the books for $16 million? Calvin has been working out, I guess, but does he really want to play? Jacksonville is kind of, their ears are perked up. Chances are, I don't think it happens. Detroit obviously owns his rights there. I do know this, that there was a fantasy football transaction on our waiver wire as Adam was walking down the hall trying to nail this thing down a little bit yesterday. I won't tell you who may have
But somebody took him.
You're saying someone picked up Calvin Johnson?
Somebody might, just as maybe a little prank to somebody who was trying to get.
Because I'll tell you right now, if it was Shefty, I'm acting on that. To me, if that's Shefty,
I'm not telling stories because he sent out an email to everybody last week. But I'm just telling you, yesterday somebody picked up Calvin Johnson. Somebody.
Okay.
And it wasn't Shefty.
I got to get to the bottom of this.
Just in case.
And then a final thought, and I enjoy when you're here seeing a lot of the people who are tweeting in this thought. For anyone who read Peter King's piece that he did with you last week, for those of us who've been your friend for 20 years here, and then there are many more at ESPN who have known you longer than we have, I was extraordinarily moved by it, as I know a lot of people were, and it is just from the bottom of our hearts such a delight to have you back here and working and being a part of this again.
No, thanks. Peter did a wonderful job. The podcast we did, I think if you listen to the opening of his podcast, Peter has a story to tell about himself, about losing his two brothers unexpectedly. And everybody has a loss. And by the way, the cancer journey, and there's terrible diseases out there, ALS and others. So it's really not, I didn't want it to be about me. I was hoping it just would give a picture of what cancer patients go through. Yeah. And so I'm not unique to that. But everybody's got their own story, and I thought Peter did a nice job, and I'm grateful. By the way, just grateful not just to you, but grateful to everybody out there who's even offered a thought or a prayer or well wishes, because it's very humbling to be in that position where that people actually care about a person.
Oh, we can't tell you how happy you're sitting in the studio with us, chatting with us.
Breaking news, which is what you were born to do. Great to see you, Mort. Thank you, as always, for everything. See you later in the day.
And I think deep down, I think you picked up Calvin Johnson.
What? That's another
if it's
story.
Shefty or Mort, I'm telling you right now, I want this news on the wire. All right, Mike and Mike, Ryan Clark is here. RC, always great to have you, certainly. And there's a ton of football to get to, both on and off the field. But this latest news that we have here, I'm looking at the latest report. Chris Mortensen, who was just in our studio, explaining the Bears tight end Zach Miller was having urgent vascular surgery in New Orleans last night to repair artery damage on his dislocated knee. And again, we await a report from either the doctors or from the team on the status of the player after the surgery. David Chow, who I follow on Twitter, he's at Pro Football Doc, and he was an NFL team doctor for 17 years, tweeted, "The knee out of place so far, the artery was torn. One of the true emergencies. Early action saves leg. Still more hurdles." That's what he tweeted, quote tweeting Mort's report. And then people are asking if it's similar to the Teddy Bridgewater injury. And David Chow tweeted, similar in that it was a knee dislocation, dissimilar in that there were no reports of artery repair surgery in the case of Teddy Bridgewater. So, guys, none of us are doctors, and Ryan, obviously, just very disturbing.
Well, definitely. When you go to play football games, you understand there's an inherent risk in playing this game, and there are a ton of injuries that you are now susceptible to. But when you hear about having to save a leg and think about what that means for the rest of your life, the way you will live your life, the things you will have the ability to do with your family, it now takes on a whole new meaning. It's now such a different focus for both the doctors, his family, and also Zach Miller. It's gone way beyond football. And so as a former football player and as a fan, you hate to see anything like this for any player.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you think of as a player when you get hurt is, okay, when can I start rehab so I can get back? And there's got to be a whole different train of thought here. Listen, we see nowadays, and this is kind of when you see the injury, it's gruesome. I thought it was broken first, but it turns out obviously what we're reporting now. But then you wait to hear what it is. Nowadays, when you see a guy get hit in the head and laying on the field, the immediate concern is, how about this down the road? When I was playing, there was more of the spinal cord. The guys were getting carted off. Yeah. And you were like, you see someone not moving. You're like, please, God, move your hands, move your feet. So there's that immediacy of, man, something may be wrong here with that. It looked gruesome. Yeah. But then we were all sitting here surprised going, oh, my God. I mean, they're talking about saving his leg. It's just hard to fathom.
I know, I went through something very different from a lot of other people when it comes to football.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I can't say you don't enter any game thinking about that. You don't enter any game thinking about this may be my last game or this may be the last time I get an opportunity to do that. But I know for me, it was on the side of saving my life. And it's going to be sad, but Zach Miller for sure, though I know he wants to save his leg. I know his family cares about his leg. He also cares about the game too. So the type of stress and the type of emotional support he is going to need from those around him, from the team, is going to be immense, because it's going to be tough to deal with the mortality that things like this, bring into your life and bring it to the forefront of football players who think so much about now. We don't really think about the future. Zach Miller wasn't thinking about the next game. He wasn't even thinking about the next play. He was thinking about making that catch. And now to have to deal with this, it's such a whirlwind of emotion, and it's such a whirlwind of decisions he has to make.
By the way, I thought he caught that ball. That's
I did
obviously
too.
the
Absolutely.
Stunned it was overturned. Stunned.
Ryan is here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Overwhelmingly, the biggest story in the NFL over this weekend was the Texans players in particular, and I think all players in general's reaction to the comments by the owner of the Houston Texans franchise, Bob McNair, in those meetings a week and a half ago. Everyone is aware now of what I'm talking about. And so with that as the backdrop, I'm just wondering, I was very interested to see how they would handle it as a team, and then how they would play as a result of it and all the rest of that. And so clearly, I mean, if anything was ever made clear yesterday, it's that players work for the owners, but they play for each other.
Exactly.
And that certainly is what we saw from those Texans yesterday. I'll give you the floor. What was your take on what we've seen around the NFL the last 48 hours?
Yeah, well, I think when you look at what the Texans were able to do, it goes to family for me. It goes to the tons of arguments you can have with your wife or have with your children. And as long as they stay in-house, you're able to go out and show that united front. You might argue and fuss at the house, but then when you walk out, nobody's going to know what's going on at home. Well, the Texans didn't get that opportunity. Right. Many of the players, especially guys like Jeff Saturday, myself, that have sat with owners and talked about CBA negotiations, we know that mindset. The Houston Texans understand that mindset of division between ownership and labor. And even just for 1 second to talk about the comments, I know a lot of people, especially, you talk about Twitter or different situations, say, okay, well, it's not racism. And I'm willing to say that it's not. It's not literal. I'm also willing to say that it's not literal. So what it comes down to is now you have to say, why would someone make a statement like this about players? The exact thing that Colin Kaepernick was kneeling for initially wasn't about necessarily racism. It was about inequality. It was about the devaluing of a certain section of people's lives. So that's exactly what you hear from Bob McNair. It's not that he's calling the players inmates. He's saying that I'm not concerned about you to the point where I can't think to myself, you know what, maybe this isn't a good thing to say. Maybe in this social climate, I should word this a different way, because he's not concerned about what the players will think, how the players will feel. He doesn't have a high value on what they think, which is exactly why this all started. So now when you're the Houston Texans, you have to deal with this very publicly, because you have the section of people, and let's just say whether it's African-American people or people who are pro-protest, who are saying, okay, you need to do something. And then you're going to have the other side of people who are going to be defending these statements, who have been defending these type of actions the whole time. And so now they had to figure out a way to come together, make their statement unified, show solidarity with the team, but also play this football game. And Golic has played the game for a long time, and he understands. Greeny, when the play starts, like legitimately, no matter what's going on in the crowd, no matter what you see on the Jumbotron, when the play starts, all you see is your teammates, right, the opposite team, and your job. And that's what the Houston Texans did a great job of focusing on. And when you have a guy like Deshaun Watson, which sometimes when players don't know, it's actually better. When players don't go into the game saying, oh, I played Seattle so many times and I played there so many times and it's so difficult to play there, that's when you start to think and overthink. Deshaun Watson just went out and played football. He went out and played football the same way he had to play when Nick Saban had the best defense ever. When we were sitting on the show talking about how historic that defense was, he went out and put up 400 and led a game-winning drive. And so we saw the same type of thing yesterday. Yeah. He just went out there and played. He made mistakes. He came back and did better the next time. He made a more impressive plays the next time. And I think it was fun to watch. And it gave us some football in a game that could have been talked about for so many other reasons.
Yeah, and the players, I'm with you, and Jeff said the same thing, and you're right. This is something, if once it went public, people took sides, and what did the players have to do? And I had said earlier, and the one thing I had said earlier that it was taking away from the initial protest, and there are those that are saying it's part of the same thing. Here's my difference, and maybe I'm not expressing it correctly, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Colin Kaepernick knelt for inequality. These players got mad at what Bob McNair said, and they showed unity, but the employer is never going to be equal to the employee. The employer and the employee are never going to be equal, right? So that's where I was saying this, to me, is it not different? I know it can be part of the grand same thing. Well, but this is not inequality of what's going on when people are getting killed.
Right, you're saying that the Houston Texans protest or their show of unity wasn't in the same breath, or wasn't with the same consciousness of Colin Kaepernick's. I absolutely agree with that. I also agree with that when it comes to President Trump's comments. It was now about free speech.
Right.
But what happens is when you go back to Colin Kaepernick's initial protest of social injustice, it involved all types of racism. Whether it's institutional racism, whether it's systematic racism, and all of these things play a part in that. I agree in the sense that the large amount of Houston Texans who took a knee weren't taking a knee for the exact same reason that Colin Kaepernick did. And the initial message has been diluted by the things outside of football and the people outside of the initial protesters. But in the end, it all goes back to the same thing, is that there is different values put on certain people. And this is not just based on race. It's based on, gender, class, all of these different things. And it continues to show each and every day in society now.
So because we want to get to some football too, but
definitely
one more on this, and we just had Morton here saying some of the owners, now they're rethinking the extension with Roger Goodell. Where's the maybe headbutting there? This meeting with players and owners and Roger Goodell got canceled. That was today. Where do you think that goes? Is that going to get lost in all? Because as I said earlier, that to me is the most important thing. There was dialogue in a meeting there that could lead to something, and now it seems like that's been lost a bit.
Yeah, I've been kind of going, I went back and forth with Malcolm Jenkins a little bit, who's obviously been a big part of spearheading this, just talking to him about different things he wanted to do in the community, different things he wanted to do in political outreach, and how I could be involved in those. And so those talks were exciting to a lot of players. Not a ton got done in the talks, but it was at least the initial step that I speak all the time about. When I was on with you guys and Adam Silver was on, the commissioner of the NBA, and he talked about actually being proactive with the players. And I thought that was a good step toward that. I think a huge thing with the commissioner now, and a huge thing with anybody that wants to detract from what the initial message was and actually addressing it and making progress forward, is let's talk about something else. When President Trump tweets about the players kneeling, it actually dilutes the message, because now we discuss the actual method of protest. And so now when you actually have an opportunity to start dialogue, the commissioner's job comes into play. I have an opinion on it. I'm not necessarily saying this is true, but the commissioner's job is to take the hits and the bullets for the shield.
Right.
The shield is the owners. Roger Goodell doesn't work for the players. That's been made very clear through negotiations, through the way that he handles appeals. And so what he does is he says and does what the owners want him to do, but he takes it on his back. There came a situation now where Roger Goodell doesn't necessarily believe the owners are on the side of right. And these are bullets he is deciding not to take. He is making statements that are pro-player. He is saying things that are that aren't anti-protest. And so now when doing this, Jerry Jones has to be the bad guys when he says everyone will stand. All of these different owners, Bob McNair has to be the bad guys when he says the inmates can't run to prison, because Roger Goodell isn't handling these things for him. So now we have an issue with you. You're our guy, right? You're the guy that takes these hits for us. We shouldn't have to come out publicly and make statements. We shouldn't have to release things saying where we stand with this, because you should be doing it for us.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Goodell, not only, according to the reports, not only doing so publicly, but privately as well in those meetings. And he does have some support in that room. I think Lurie supports that. I think York supports that. I think there are owners who support that. And that's why when you get something the next day where Snyder and Jones and McNair are in the room, then all of a sudden the tenor of the conversation changes. I have a variety of thoughts on this. We'll take a short break. We'll come back. Ryan Clark is here.
Mike, reminding you miss any of the show, including Jessica Mendoza in Hour 3, you can listen to all 4 hours of Mike on demand in the ESPN app. And now you can subscribe to our Best of podcast. It's all available in the Listen tab of the ESPN app.
All right, just the few minutes we have left with Ryan Clark. Let's just finish the conversation we were having a moment ago, because we're never going to get anywhere else of consequence. And I would say this. I quoted the great George Carlin earlier this morning. His most famous routine was this one where he said there's thousands of words in the English language, and there are 7 of them you can't say on television. Right. And one of the lines that he had in there was, there are no bad words. There are bad intentions.
Yes.
And so I would actually use that in the reverse in this case. In my personal opinion, and I'm only speaking for myself, the words Bob McNair said, when used literally, are used all the time in business. But it was the intention behind it that would have offended me if I was a player in the National Football League, because he's basically saying, look, you just let us do what we do. You guys are lucky to be out there in the first place, so we're going to do what we do, and you guys just shut up and do what we tell you to do. And I tell you where that would never happen, in the NBA.
Exactly.
Where players are respected by ownership and by the front office of the league. And so when you wonder, well, why don't the NBA players feel a need to kneel? It's because they feel respected. They feel a part of the conversation. They feel as though they have a voice that matters. And the ultimate irony of this is that this situation is the first time that Goodell is now on the other side. Mm-hmm. Goodell is actually lined up with the players in this, which is remarkable since, for the most part, they hate him.
And which is why we're talking about him not getting extended.
Yeah, maybe. I hadn't even thought of that, and that is certainly not impossible. But whether that is or isn't the case here, what I think was clear was that Bob McNair's comments represented a total lack of disrespect for not just the players on his team, but all the players around the NFL. And that's much more significant than the specific words that he chose to use.
And where this is all going, Ryan, that's what I was really holding to this. When the players had that meeting with the owners, I thought, okay, I knew nothing concrete was going to come out of that. They were going to be amicable. There was going to be no mandates coming out of that because they wanted to get to a next meeting and didn't want anything going. I am looking, because you see that NBA relationship, I'm looking forward to the 2021 negotiation, that they start to build some sort of foundation between league and union, between owners and players. And then, I mean, it seemed like, oh, my God, is this a half a step forward? Mm-hmm. They had a meeting. It seemed to go like a good meeting, and now the next meeting's canceled. So have we now taken 2 more steps back of there never being any trust, when right there slapping them all in the face is, hey, look at Michelle Roberts and Adam Silver. You know, they're hanging out, and you know, the league and the players, there's a ton of money out there for everybody, and if you can find a way to get along, and it looks like we took a little step toward that, and then it looks like it all got destroyed.
Yeah, I don't want to make this an NBA, NFL conversation, but here's a huge difference. When LeBron James changes teams or makes a decision, it permeates through the whole entire league. We don't have many football players who can do that. The ones that can normally do that play quarterback, and most of them aren't African American. So that's the first thing. And so you don't feel the pressure that Adam Silver is under to make sure that those guys are happy. And so when you talk about when you look at the comments made by Bob McNair, it is a total disrespect. It is a total lack of value. It is a total lack of awareness of the people that work for you, because we're never going to say they work together, which is what we say with the NBA. And so now you have to figure out a way to continue the conversation forward. And maybe this mistake, maybe what he said actually helps in a way where he decides, you know what, I have to do something tangible to make up for what I said. And maybe there's some progress in Houston where we've seen amazing things happen this year.
We're going to run out of time, which I regret. RC, it's always great to see you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks for being here. All right, we got Monday Night Football tonight. World Series continues tomorrow. What a crazy week. See you back and better than ever. Same time, same place tomorrow. Mike and Mike.